Please welcome Mr. Hakeem Shindi.
That was very nice. Okay. I'd like to dedicate this speech to Mr. Tim Staples. Class of, oh shoot, okay, nice. Class of 23, we made it. Oh man, it's gonna be rough. When you cross that stage, get your diploma and shake those hands, I want you to reflect on all the work it took for us to get here. All the AP exams, practices, long hours studying were a lot to handle, and I think we managed pretty well. So in that moment, be proud of yourself and the accomplishment you've worked hard for. But after, when you see faculty, family, friends, and anyone else who supported you along the way, I want you to think of everything they've done to help you reach this point and give them a big hug, because we truly couldn't have done it without them. So with that, let's give everyone a big round of applause for all the work we've done to get here. Okay. Now, they say if you're nervous, you should imagine the crowd in their underwear, but it's just a bunch of dudes, so it's not really helping. That was not my joke, by the way. That was a friend. Me and ChatGPT worked very hard to try and keep this speech semi-interesting, but if at any point my speech gets too boring, Mr. McElroy and AV will put up some Subway Surfers gameplay on the big screens. I was kidding about the ChatGPT. I didn't actually use it. Unless you don't like my speech, then it was completely AI generated. These last 4 years at Damien have been rough. Freshman year was the beginning. Many of us were about half the size we are now. We were confused, nervous, and really just wanted to make some friends. Then, once we finally got our footing, the universe swept our feet from under us, and we were back at square one. I remember when the school first announced 2 weeks off over this random virus, everyone was celebrating and thinking how awesome it was that we'd get a second spring break. It was not 2 weeks, and it was not awesome. We thought we'd have more time to hang out with friends and less time worrying about school. But if your time online was anything like mine, it was more or less the opposite. And even then, in a lockdown, we still found ways to make the best of it. We played video games together, outside of class, of course. We made jokes in our breakout rooms, and we were actually able to maintain some form of social normalcy. Then we came back masked up and socially distanced for our hardest challenge yet, the infamous junior year. We were put to the test, and to be honest, in some classes, we failed. One of these classes was AP US History with Dr. Michael Williams. Oh man, giving me flashbacks. It was rough for many reasons, mostly because Doc was actually trying to prepare us for college, which was unbelievable. And as Doc said himself, my class had a COVID hangover. To put it into perspective, there were so many issues with late work that year, administration actually created an entire new late work policy, the grade audit deadline. So if anyone says the class of 23 didn't leave a legacy behind at Damien, they can flip to page 63 of the student handbook and see one example right there. I digress. In Doc's class, we had AP MCQ unit tests, his notoriously evil true or false, where he'd only change like one word of a definition. And oh my, the notes were actually terrible, but all of these paled in comparison to the essays. To put it into context, you spend a couple hours trying to understand the articles he gave, and then a couple more crafting the most impressive piece of literature in your lifetime, maybe even your bloodline, and then get a B. If you're lucky, a B+. Now, all of this work was given to prepare us for college and AP exams, so thank you. That's like mandatory to say. But that being said, I'd like to share a story about how doing one of these essays, or rather not doing one of them, impacted me. It was the day before it was due, and I uncharacteristically waited until the last minute to start it. If you're a seasoned procrastinator, which I am not, then you know the hardest part is starting, especially when what you're doing is way more interesting than what you have to do. Now, I was reading, it's kind of weird, I was reading about why wombats poop in cubes. The complexities of the Revolutionary War versus poop cubes, for me it was simple. Anyways, my mom came into my room and asked what I was doing, so I answered truthfully and told her that I was working. Now, it wasn't on homework, but still on wombats, so it wasn't really a lie. At least that's what I tell myself. Unfortunately, my mom knows me better than that, so she told me to come with her to transport an Afghani refugee family from the airport, because that's just the type of thing that my mom does on weekends. Truthfully, I really did have a lot of work to do. I was about 3 weeks behind on notes for 2 classes. I still had that big essay and some fun, extremely difficult calc Khan academies. That being said, I didn't want to do any of it, and any good excuse to not start my work seemed amazing. So I went with my mom, and on the way there, she asked about school. I proceeded to complain and whine for about half the drive. The textbook is so long, the articles are so pedantic, and the stupid Khan academies don't take fully unsimplified answers, blah, 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 blah. Eventually, we got there and met the 3 kids we were taking. They were the nicest kids. The oldest was Hussein, he was 24. The second oldest was Ahmed, he was 20. And then they had a younger sister in middle school, and I forgot her name, that's my bad. On the way to their new home, we talked, and I was shocked at how much we had in common. Ahmed, the middle child, was basically me. He liked video games, soccer, and J. Cole. I don't know what I thought he'd be like, but certainly not that. That was the first thing these kids taught me, or rather reminded me of. Other people aren't as different as you think. You just have to take the time to talk and find your similarities. After we talked about all the fun things we had in common, my mom asked a great question to keep the conversation going. What are you guys looking forward to the most about America? In my head, because I'm stupid, I thought they'd say something like eating a hamburger or going to Disneyland. But after thinking for a moment, Ahmed's face lit up, and he said going to school. It broke my heart. All I remember was the intense feeling of embarrassment. How could I be so dumb? Treating something that other kids would die for, have died for, as nothing more than an inconvenience. I had gotten so caught up in our little bubble, I forgot the sheer amount of privilege we had. To worry about girls and clout rather than where our next meal's coming from. To stress about assignments and sports rather than our safety. You see, what Ahmed helped me realize is that we are not at fault for having the privilege we do, but we are at fault for not using it to the most of our ability. It's easy to understand how our actions have consequences, but sometimes it's hard to see how our inaction has consequences as well. Consequences that don't just affect you or your family, but every kid like Ahmed out there who would love the opportunity to write an essay or do calculus, but doesn't have the chance to. After that moment, everything got easier for me. Second semester of junior year flew by, and senior year, I continued my momentum through college apps to here. I was still taking the same rigor, doing extracurriculars, the whole shebang. But for the first time, I knew why I was doing it. And I'm not gonna lie, it was still really hard. It still is really hard, even at this moment, and I don't expect it to ease up at all. The difference is that now, even when I don't have the strength to do things for my own, I can find the strength to do it for others. And once you have that, nothing is beyond your reach. In the words of our very own Aidan Montfort, he who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. I'd like to leave you with this. We've done good work, and we should celebrate it. But be proud, not content. Everyone sitting in this room has great privilege. It'd be a shame to not use it to the best of your ability. As it says in the New Testament, to whom much is given, much is expected. If you're sitting in this room right now, you've been given much. I know it's not grammar, but I know it might be hard to see now, and it was certainly hard when we were doing it. But all of those useless assignments and classes have given us the tools to do anything. So go out and do it. You don't have to change the entire world, but at least change your world. I personally am excited to see how each and every one of us will make a difference. And when you do, make sure you do it with kindness, with love, with faith, and with a smile. Thank you. Yeah.